Your teacher asks the class a difficult question that you know the answer to, but you refuse to raise your hand because you don't want to embarrass yourself. Maybe you have doubts that you actually know the answer, and even if you did know the answer, you didn't want to stumble over your words and make a fool of yourself. Your classmate decides to participate. They decide to raise their hand, answer the question, and it's the very same answer that you had in mind. That's imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is an illusion. Imposter syndrome lies to you. It tells you that you're not qualified. It tells you that you're not good enough. It tells you that you don't belong here. Those are all lies. When I think about imposter syndrome, I think about this essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's called Self-reliance. For about 10 years or so, I've been using this excerpt as my North Star to guide my way through imposter syndrome and imposter feelings alike. A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across his mind from within, more than the luster of the firmament and bards and sages. Yet he dismisses without notice his thought because it is his. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. We dismiss our own thoughts because they are ours. How many times have you seen somebody who you deemed unqualified for something navigate it effortlessly? It's insane how people who don't know what they're doing have all of this confidence to do what they supposedly don't know what they're doing, while we freeze up due to analysis paralysis or imposter syndrome or imposter feeling. So I'm gonna give you two ways to conquer imposter syndrome, or at least navigate it. This is not to say I'm over imposter syndrome or I'm not prone to imposter syndrome. I'm definitely prone to imposter syndrome, especially when it comes to sitting here talking to you guys about specific IT topics that I'm not necessarily an expert in, but I'm working on. And that's the key thing to imposter syndrome now that I'm thinking about it. Imposter syndrome's kryptonite is understanding that you are not perfect. None of us are perfect, and we're all learning as we go along. And again, this is why my channel's motto is learning and growing together. This is not some type of experience where we're all experts here and, we're perfect or claiming to be perfect. We're all learning and growing because this is a lifelong process, especially in the IT field. I'll give you a little story. I was on an interview a few weeks ago, and the interviewer, he was dope. He was really cool. And he gave me some insight into imposter syndrome. He said the only difference between me and anybody else on the floor is that the people that are on the floor have experience working within a team. They've built up a rapport with one another, but at the end of the day, they all use Google Food. They all use Google.com to figure out and solve problems that they have no expertise in. There's some team members that might have expertise in a certain topic, and there might be other team members that have expertise, using that term lightly, in another topic, and they all help one another. We're all learning. We're all working on it. First, you need to trust in yourself, not have confidence. Trust and confidence are two different things. Trust is predicated on all of the hard work and preparation that you put in to get to where you are. Now, when you get to where you are, you're gonna have these imposter feelings. You're gonna have imposter syndrome. You're gonna feel like you're not qualified despite all of the work that you put in. But you don't have to have confidence in yourself. Have trust in all of the work that you put in, because that process molded you into the person that you are today. And the quality of that process ferments the caliber of your skills. If you didn't prepare properly for a position or an exam, then you have all right to feel like an imposter. You have all right to have anxiety over it because you didn't prepare effectively enough. But if you know you've worked hard and you've stayed up late and you've grinded yourself into a fine powder, then you should have trust in that process that facilitated your ascension to that position. Now, confidence, I look at as a little bit of a fake it to make it type scenario. Confidence is you saying, okay, I got this, which is a helpful element to defeating imposter syndrome. But the most effective way to defeat imposter syndrome in the IT world is trusting in in your skills, in your preparation. This is something that I use to defeat test taking anxiety. When I was taking the CCNA, I was riddled with test taking anxiety, and it got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I guess it was like at question number 5, I said to myself, Dre, you've prepared for over 500 hours. Yes, I definitely logged how many hours I studied. And there's a reason I did that. It's for this specific reason. You've prepared for over 500 hours. Why are you this nervous? If you've prepared efficiently, which is what I did, for over 500 hours, there's no reason for you to feel unprepared or feel like you shouldn't be sitting in this seat taking this exam, right? And I let that guide me, and I ended up passing the exam. Again, I was so nervous to the point where I just couldn't think straight, and I had to kind of like take a deep breath, and I had to recenter. You could use this same technique. Think about all of the hours that you put in preparing, studying, optimizing your life, the sacrifices that you've made to get to where you are, because you can always lean on that and say, hey, look, I'm not going to listen to you, imposter feelings. You can literally talk to yourself like that and say, hey, look, I'm not going to listen to you. It's nothing but a monologue in your head, but you know for a fact that you've prepared. Another weapon in your arsenal for defeating or battling imposter syndrome is Solomon's paradox. So Solomon's paradox essentially says that we are experts at other people's problems, but when it comes to our own, we're novices. And that's because we're too close to our own problems to actualize an effective solution. When it comes to other people's problems, we're distanced from it. We can see the whole landscape, and we can come up with an effective solution to solve their problems, or at least help them with their problems. You can treat yourself sort of as another person. Pretend like you're a really best friend that you're giving advice to, or maybe you're a child that you're responsible for, and think of what you would say to that child or that best friend to help them with their imposter syndrome, or maybe a specific problem that they're working on in the IT field. When you create this quasi dissociation, you are more objective because you've distance yourself from yourself and your problems. You can really navigate better because you can see the whole landscape rather than seeing just a very small scope of the field. These are two very powerful tools that I've even used in my professional life. And I'll give you a story. 8 years ago, I became a union steward, and I was a union steward for about 6 years. So for those of you who don't know what a union steward is, it's essentially a lawyer for union employees. My responsibility was to enforce and interpret labor contracts, bargaining agreements, and I had to be so competent in the contract language that I would have to know the specific context to apply certain contract clauses to. So again, it's kind of like being a lawyer. I was very much responsible for people not losing their jobs and getting unfair discipline and many other things that I had to really be responsible for, right? I'm thinking back to it, and it was a lot of responsibility. I was responsible for anywhere between maybe 50 to 100 union members, because that particular building was just growing in staff. So the more staff came on, the more union membership and the more people I was responsible for, right? When I first became a union steward, I had a bunch of imposter feelings bouncing around in my skull. First of all, I was the youngest union steward in that building. There were driver union stewards, there were all kinds of different union stewards that have been around for decades. Here I was with about 4 years on the job. So I didn't even really know what the job was all about to begin with, because I only had 4 years on the job. So I felt like I didn't belong there. I felt like I shouldn't have been elected to union steward, because more seasoned veterans that were there that could have became a union steward, but they chose not to run. I chose to run, and I got elected. I felt like I wasn't competent enough because I didn't have the experience, but I used the guiding star of Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-reliance essay to understand that I'm learning and I'm growing in the position, right? And that's what life is all about. It's about learning, growing, collaborating with people, which is what I did with mentors and my union officer, business agent, and I grew into the position little by little every day. And this is something that you could do in the IT world or any job. This is something that applies for any job. You can seek out mentorship. You can seek out people who are actually, you know, seasoned at the field or experts at the field, right? And even the experts will tell you, I'm not an expert. I've never heard an expert actually say that they are experts, because I have a theory. I think that experts suffer from imposter syndrome more than any of us, because really think about it. To call yourself an expert in a field holds a lot of responsibility. And if you mess up in this day and age, the internet never forgets. Nobody forgets nowadays, and it'll always be thrown in your face. Expertise comes with a lot of imposter syndrome because of that. But seek out one of those experts that'll help you and guide you and grow you. And these imposter feelings that you feel, you'll get over them. And you'll probably end up always having these imposter feelings, because as you grow, I think what you don't know also grows as well, because there's a saying that you don't know what you don't know. As your knowledge base grows, what you don't know also grows, because this tech field is constantly evolving each and every day. And this goes into my point about nobody being perfect, nobody being 100% proficient on everything. And that should take some pressure off of yourself and quiet those imposter feelings a little bit. At least that's what helped me. Trust in your skills. Trust in the process that you went through to acquire those skills. Also use the phenomenon of Solomon's paradox. The main thesis of that is to distance yourself from yourself and your problems, to look at it in a very objective way. That should help you out, right? And also, again, understand that you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Your perspective, my perspective, is as good as anyone else's perspective, because it's yours. You're filtering everything that you experience through the perspective of your two eyeballs, right? Or your two ears, your five senses. That's all I have to say about that. If you like videos like this, click right here, and I'll talk to you guys next time.